I sent an email to all council members with a letter that I drafted about eagles. We're all getting hit with eagles. I don't think there's anybody around this table who is concerned about the safety of passengers. The point of the letter, who is a concern, I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about this coffee. I haven't had any all day. I've called Marcus 2 times to clarify a few things just so I had an understanding. I really didn't need to take on the Eagle issue. I have enough on my plate right now. But I thought that after reading a lot of the emails and doing some research, that this happened so quickly that I think that we missed out on some other options and presentations, not from your staff side. I think that this came down so hard from the FAA as a agreement to the Wildlife Management Group in the USDA that we've only looked at one approach, which is the nest removal. I'm a science teacher, and so I look at the science behind this, and after reading that there could be other resources out there that could help mitigate this, I'm asking that council doesn't have a vote in this. We never took a vote on it, but we unintentionally got involved in this, and people have blamed us, for this happening. And that's just the nature of government. But, in conversations with various people that, if Wayne Shank and the airport authority were to possibly take a step back and go back and look at some of the other options that are out there. I think that the Eagle enthusiasts, the people that we've gotten a few crazy emails, but generally if you read them, they understand the safety concerns as well. They're just asking us to look at some of the other options that are out there, and they want to be part of the solution too. They're not beating us down. There are a few people that have sent some nasty emails, but the majority of them actually understand this concern. In fact, some of them will agree that the nest might be a little bit too close, but they just want to be part of the solution with this. And so the letter is, since council can't formally take a vote, if there are council members who read it and agree with it, and I'm not trying to undermine you, Marcus, or, add anything to the agenda. I just am asking if anybody would like to join in and just ask them to relook at it before they do this. There's a lot of data, a lot of facts out there, how the female eagle got killed, there's so many different things, but when it comes back down to it, I'm looking at the science of it, and are we being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars? Because many scientists will agree with me on this, that it's not going to work. We're going to spend all this money, not us, the airport, which they're kind of us, are going to spend all this money trying to take these nests away, and the eagles are just going to relocate somewhere else. Somebody called me today and said, did you know that the permit extends out 3 to 4 miles? Which will put this on the amphibious base in the city of Virginia Beach. Do we communicate with those entities to find out if, we can go on their property or if this happens? I just think that we're going too fast at it, and I think it was because of the pressure the airport wanted to act. I asked Bernard about liability on this. I don't know, Bernard, if you want to weigh in, but the fact is that if God forbid there was an incident that, anybody could be listed as a defendant, in this, but we already have dispersal methods in place that we're doing. And the other side of it too, which I put that in here, that you take the eagles away, they're the biggest predator out there for some of the other birds that actually have caused more problems. I went back, I have a book that I went through and looked at all the bird strikes, and it's not just birds, it's foxes, it's rabbits, it's other things from Norfolk International Airport, and it's amazing to see what small percentage the eagles are when it comes to the incidents that happen there. And there are some resources out there that can be looked at that can prevent all of that without removing the nest. And so that's just where I'm coming from this. It's, we're going to have some speakers tonight. I think they're generally going to take a positive approach to this. They just want to be involved and help with this, finding a positive solution to this. I think the Norfolk Botanical Board, which has not taken a formal position on this, I talked with the chair today. They want to be involved in this as well. They just want to be able to make sure that we're making the right and best decision. And if at the end it is moving the nest, removing the nest, and that's after we've vetted everything and looked at it, then that's the appropriate thing to do.
Can I just say a couple of things here, first of all? I appreciate Tommy's passion for this, and there are a lot of folks who, everybody around here is concerned about these eagles. Nothing that we would anticipate doing would do any harm that I'm aware of to the eagles. It would just, in fact, try to get them out of harm's way. Tommy said we were sort of unintentionally drawn into this. I think it was appropriate for the manager to brief us, to tell us the steps that he was taking about applying for this permit, and just very. I mean, we can argue among ourselves about what's the best thing to do. We can argue with experts, but when the federal and the state folks send you a letter, when we receive instructions from them to apply for a permit to move the nests because they consider it an extreme safety hazard, I don't know how you argue with that. To be honest, I mean, with the people who were charged, folks who are apparently the authorities, and they may be, we may take issue with a lot of stuff that they say or do or don't do, but when they say that it's an extreme safety hazard, and I think that's the quote, and the other thing is, I think Marcus and his folks have been looking at this for well over a year now. They've had numerous meetings, and we weren't asked to vote. We didn't vote. It was clear that the consensus of the council was supportive of the manager. The paper reported that way. I don't know that there's anything else to say. I appreciate Tommy's, bringing it back to us again. But Marcus, do you want to?
Well, and can I just clarify one thing too? It's the FAA and the USDA have agreed for a permit to continue dispersal, not nest removal. That's just one of the ways of dispersal. And so,
okay, I stand correct.
Am I correct in saying that? I mean, that's the permit is to shoot, the air guns at them, and
I didn't read the letter.
Right, but I think that there's other measures that other airports have taken, whether it's the Merlin system or, there's other things out there. I think that it gives us the option to be able to continue doing some of the dispersal that they're doing, but also the nest removal if that's an option.
Yeah, well, they did specify the removal of the nest, and so what I'll do is maybe do a couple of quotes from the letters that were sent to me. But one of the things that's important, and believe you me, removing the eagles, if there was another way of doing it, I'm all for it. That can still ensure safety, and as I mentioned last week, one of the issues is I'm convinced that even if we look at history and what has been occurring at different airports, I'm not sure that there's anything out there that is 100% foolproof, even if there are some mechanisms out there now that have been in place for, let's say, a short period of time. I think what's important is that if you go back to 2011, April 2011, when there was I guess another Eagle strike, there was a letter that was sent in May from the airport authority director, which basically said that we need to evaluate the location of the nests and take whatever action you feel appropriate. That was a letter that was sent to the State's Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, and also to the U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife Services. It was also copied to the Botanical Garden. So at that point, that more or less started this process. It's important that throughout this process, what was important that two things had to occur. One is that there needed to be a wildlife hazard assessment. And if that assessment suggested there's an issue, then there would be a wildlife management plan. Over the next 9 months, there were 6 entities that were discussing this issue. It's the two that I just mentioned. It's the U.S. Department of Agricultural, Animal, and Plant Health Inspection Services, Wildlife Services, which was called Wildlife Services. It was the Federal Aviation Administration. It was the Norfolk Airport Authority, and the Botanical Garden. So for 9 months, there were a series of discussions, whether they were emails or face-to-face or ad hoc groups. There were discussions going on. And during that time, they reviewed the assessment. The letter that I received in February, some of the, after the assessment was concluded, the language was, quote, bald eagles were identified as an extremely high hazard risk to aviation safety at the Norfolk International Airport. They also said that the wildlife Safety Services, remains firm on its position that the nest at the garden poses a significant threat to aviation safety. There was a specific ask of the city, and the ask was, in quote, "We strongly recommend that the city of Norfolk move forward by requesting the appropriate permit to enable the removal of the bald eagle nest at the Norfolk Botanical Garden as outlined in the airport's wildlife hazard management plan and requested by the airport in correspondence to the garden in November 2011. The continued presence of the nest there is a liability and possesses a significant risk to public safety and to the safety of the eagles," end of quote. That was, again, signed by Game and Inland Fishery, that's the state entity, the U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife Services, and the U.S. Department of Wildlife Services. Then on July 24th, I get a letter from this very similar from the FAA. And their ask is, in quote, "The presence of bald eagles at ORF represents a significant threat to flight safety. We recommend that the city of Norfolk request the appropriate permits to enable the removal of the bald eagle nest at the Norfolk Botanical Garden," end of quote. So all in all, you get these 6 different entities that have been working together over the course of 9 months. And I'm not saying they're meeting weekly, but clearly there's correspondence back and forth. And so when this, came to me, I didn't, it seemed more like the what were we supposed to do? And the ask was to request a permit, and that's what we've done. Now the how is not that simple in terms of how do you make sure that there's discussions and everybody is around the table, making sure that we really put our thinking caps on how this can work. But to me, if we did not apply for the permit, and that was the ask, I found it very difficult not to take that next step and follow through with the ask.
And I understand that. I think that that's fine. It once again goes back to the science. If the only thing that the USDA and Wildlife Management presented to the FAA was the nest removal, then that's the only thing that ever trickled its way back down to your office was nest removal without looking at any other types of mediation or remediation, whatever you want to call it, that are out there, because that's what the Wildlife Management Group does. That's how they mitigate things, but there are other things that were out there, and so that's where the concern came from. And I think there were some people at the table in the Norfolk Botanical Gardens. They were at those meetings, but from what I was told, they felt like that they didn't have a voice at those meetings. That their opinion was not. It didn't matter. The decision was already made. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But there are people will speak tonight, and there's an online petition of 2,700 people, not just in Norfolk, people that were planning on coming here in April, making plans, and economic development part of it, side of it too. The dollars that come in. I think the impact on the botanical gardens on this. If there were other options out there, I just hope that the Airport Authority Board and the Norfolk Botanical Gardens boards, which we appoint, would have taken a formal vote on this and not just left it with a director telling you that this is what they said. I would have hoped that they would have voted on it, and apparently that didn't happen.
Let me ask one question about this liability. Having been directed, it seems pretty straightforward. You mentioned we can be sued for anything. Byron, can you elaborate whether there is significant potential for liability or there is not if we don't follow the mandate? Because this is a big concern of mine.
I would say that there is, that if an eagle caused the death of passengers, the lawyers representing the estates of those passengers would name the owner of the property where the nests were maintained. And one of their possible causes of action would be the maintenance of a nuisance or something like that. And so that this airport precedes the eagle's nest, and the Botanical Gardens has caused the nest to be there after that. And these experts are saying that its creation presents a risk to the life of the passengers that fly. So if that unlikely event that nobody wanted to happen happened, I don't think there's a plaintiff's lawyer worth his salt who would not include the defendant as a city, as the owner of the property, from which the eagles flew into the plane.
Do you
So
think they would have a legitimate?
it would be a serious lawsuit, yes.
What about a goose? If a goose caused it? I'm just
Well, you know,
playing the devil's advocate.
If geese were of the same risk, ate those mises to pieces. If it was of the same risk and the botanical gardens did the same cultivation after the fact, yes, that you'd have the same, similar exposure.
Well, I understand if we've rounded up, they've rounded up the geese.
Right, but they do the same types of dispersals
They've gotten
for,
rid of them.
yeah, they do the same type of dispersals for all the birds. I guess that's what the eagle enthusiasts are arguing, is that there's no greater percentage of threat with the eagles than the other birds, and so.
Look, I'd like to cut this off. I mean, Tommy's, he said that's the end of it, but it's more than just the legal, it's the question of what's the right thing to do. I mean, it isn't just a question, could you get sued, in my opinion. It's, you know, well, it's well, it is and it isn't, but I mean, what is the right thing to do when you've been told that some experts in the field think that you've got words like extremely high, and you got hazard. I don't know what else you do, but try to get rid of the hazard. And, you know, that's, I mean, some people up here have to bite that stuff off, and that's what you do. Okay, all right. All right, thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you.
All right,